All right, man. Peace. So Shannon Sharp, they're talking about Adam Pac-Man Jones. He recently got into an issue where he was arrested by police, and he was acting a little wild in regard to his interaction with the police. He honestly is lucky to be alive with a lot of the stupid actions that he's done. But Shannon is going to try to make a certain point about black male, so-called black male on black male interaction and the dynamics behind it. And let's see what he has to say.
Hey, Skip, and I know how this is going to sound, but it bothers me. It bothers me that guys, and they say, well, you know, I used to say African American, I say black, but I guess the PC thing to say is people of color.
You notice he said African, black, or people of color. The reason why he has to go through so many terms is because none of those terms are applicable to so-called black people that are of the captivity. All right? Proverb and a byword.
It bothers me that people of color act like this when they have other people of color of head coaches. You see the way he acts for Marvin Lewis. It's so hard for blacks to get head coaching jobs. And everything that Pac-Man does, they say Marvin Lewis.
It's a reflection of, there's no doubt about it.
But hold on. He had the same problem in Tennessee. They didn't say Jeff Fisher. He went to Dallas. Jerry Jones had security. He ended up fighting security. They didn't say
like
the head
24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Shannon, the problem with that statement there, in the context of of how you're saying it, is that, like you said, Pac-Man Jones had these problems everywhere else. And Marvin Lewis chose to bring him in. Vontaze Burfict had these problems in college, and Marvin Lewis chose to bring him in. So you can't bring in troubled people and then say, well, how come you guys are making trouble for me? You knew what was in the package when you ordered it.
Yes. Yeah. But Marvin Lewis has to deal with this. You look at Todd Bowles, guys coming late to meetings, the way they carry on. You look at Mike Tomlin, Antonio Brown. Yep. Mike Tomlin says, we addressed this with him.
Mike Tomlin's the same guy that tried to trip somebody who was returning a kickoff. All right, let's not make it too much. Let's not make it too much into they're not respecting the black coach. Sometimes these so-called black coaches, they like to bring in troubled players, hoping that they can redeem that player or get the best out of them. So you have to view it through that prism.
I don't know what, because you remember in 1968, it was the day after Dr. King was assassinated, and James Brown was in Boston, Massachusetts. He had a concert at the Garden, and a lot of blacks started rushing the stage, and the police were about to intervene. And James Brown told the police, he said, y'all stand back. He said, I can handle it. He said, I should be able to get some respect from my own people. Y'all sit down and enjoy the concert. I'm not saying Pac-Man. I'm not saying it just because you play for a black coach. I'm not saying you should act any different, but you damn sure shouldn't act worse.
Well, he wasn't acting any different than how he acted with the previous white coaches, Shannon. That's the problem, and I understand what you're trying to say. But the issue with the black male, so-called black male, not being respected as leader, that doesn't come from Pac-Man Jones. That comes from a lot of propaganda in the educational system, all the way through the military, into the home. The so-called black man is not even allowed to lead the home. So now young black males, so-called young black males, are not accustomed to seeing black males as authority figures. And that leads to problems everywhere else, whether it be in the workforce or any other venue or scenario where you're expected to respect a black male authority figure. All right. So-called black females do not respect black male authority figures. So-called Caucasians do not respect black male authority figures. All right. This is a problem in society, not just on a so-called football team.
And it bothers me that Marvin Lewis has to deal with this because this gets placed at his feet.
It gets placed at his feet because that's what he brought onto the team. All right. I mean, I understand what Shannon's trying to say, but it's kind of a false narrative. It's like when Phil Jackson brought in Dennis Rodman. He already knew what he was bringing in, so he can't get mad when Dennis starts acting crazy. You knew what you bought.
What's the linebacker name? That
Vontaze
Burfict. That's Skip. If he played for Coach Belichick, he played for Sean Payton. They wouldn't act like this. But why would they act like this when it's so hard for minorities to get jobs?
And Shannon, you left one guy out. Ray Rhodes, who was ran out of Green Bay after 1 year for the same exact thing, where they felt he didn't have any control over because of some of the players.
He had coached at Philly before.
Right. But when he was there in Green Bay for just 1 season.
And that's what bothers me, Skip.
Well, the thing is this, and you see it a lot with a lot of so-called black men. They love to glorify the woman. They love to create the scenario of the woman being the head of the family and of the household. So once you do that, you can't get mad when other young black males don't look at you as the head of a corporation or of a society. They look at the woman or they look at the so-called white man. That's just what they do. So, I mean, that's kind of reflective of some of the issues that the so-called black man has, as well as, like I said, the major media and society at large. The so-called black man has been demonized and is not respected as a leader.
Yep, because these guys, they hold black coaches so accountable for the actions of their team, and some of the other white counterparts, they don't get that same criticism when their players act up.
Okay, I'll address that in a second, but just quickly, I don't know if this is disturbing or hilarious, but Pac-Man, ironically, is supposed to be undergoing anger management because of his legal issue, and now this happens?
He failed class.
Like, what? That's why, of all the times...
And sometimes it's not so much of an issue of him not respecting a black male authority figure. It's just that he's an idiot. Like, I think that we have enough data on Pac-Man Jones to establish that he's an idiot. Some guys are just idiots. You know, sometimes it's not about the so-called black thing. Sometimes it is. Many times it is. Sometimes guys are just idiots.
Of all the players to do that, then, but back to Marvin Lewis. So he's been there now for 14 years.
Exactly. I mean, Marvin Lewis is a bad example to use of a so-called black coach under fire. The man has been with one team for 14 years. I believe he's the longest tenured coach in the NFL outside of Belichick.
He's had his share of bad actors, and so has Bill Belichick, and so have a whole lot. Everybody has their share, but it depends. Can you keep them barely within the lines, and can they play the way you need them to play when it's time to play? Obviously, last time we saw Marvin in a playoff game, his guys could not control themselves, and they self-destructed against your Steelers. We're going back 2 years. They missed the playoffs to Cincinnati
I
last
thought they
year.
were supposed to go to the Super Bowl, but that's another question.
You were the only one that thought that.
Yeah.
But that's okay. But Marvin Lewis, you know him, he's a good man. We know that. But this is 14 years now. 7 times he's made the playoffs in 14 years with 0 playoff wins. And he still has a job the last time I checked. So how much longer can he last on that hot seat?
And has had the most talent in the NFL for about, the last, probably 6 out of the last 7 years. He's probably had the most talented team in the NFL. All right. I mean, they don't have the best quarterback in the NFL, but all that talent they had, they should have at least won one playoff game.
I guess it depends on that owner, but what do you think?
I guess Mike Brown, obviously, because anywhere else he would have been fired. Because this is pro sports has a short menu. It's wins and losses. 0-7 in the playoffs gets you fired.
Rob, but think about this. Look what the jobs that they're getting. Only Mike Tomlin got a gold standard job.
There's no doubt about it. But 14 years is not take the worst team in the league for 3 years and you can't get anything done and fire. 14 years, it ranks up there with, as far as longevity, you could put that with any coach, white, black, green, a guy to get 14 years in the same city and not deliver one playoff game.
Exactly. And beyond that, the NFL is a hard salary cap. So when people start talking about good jobs and bad jobs, I mean, that's really hard to quantify. You either can get the job done at your location or you can't. Some guys are not getting the job done. You've had so-called black coaches like Tony Dungy and Dennis Green who've come in and they've done a great job. All right. Mike Tomlin, etc. I mean, the issue really is that the so-called black man, like I've said, like I just stated, the perception of him as a leader is very low. It's not even just a sports thing. Overall, the trust factor in the so-called black male as a leader is very low. And that's because of a lack of culture. All right. And Shannon is funny. Shannon's always trying to, jump on the race thing. But like I said before, his woman is white, so-called white. So it's like, brother, you know, Shannon got some little issues that he has to deal with.
How about this?
It's unbelievable.
Okay, tell me about the 14 years before Marvin got there. How many times they went to the playoffs?
All I know is I don't know, but I know this. That franchise went to the Super Bowl twice.
That's right. They went to the Super Bowl twice in the 80s under Sam Weish. That's what I mean when I say, you know, when people start talking about bad jobs and good jobs in the NFL, you know, a bad job or good job is what you make it. You know, everybody got the same roster spots. Now, people could say, well, the owner's not spending as much money. That's a contention. But when you look at the Cincinnati Bengal roster, the last 10 years, they've had one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. Like, I don't want to hear the stuff about black athletes not treating the black coaches well in this situation, because Marvin Lewis knew what he was bringing in when he brought in Pac-Man Jones. Pac-Man Jones has been a trouble player no matter what color the coach was, or what so-called race or what so-called color the coach was.
They did.
How long ago that's been?
But I'm just saying, I can count.
God, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah, but we're not even talking about. We're talking about. Come on, now, Shannon. I'm with you on brothers getting the bad jobs, but you also have to be accountable and you have to produce.
Absolutely.
He has not produced in Cincinnati from the standpoint that he needs to win a playoff game. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's not. I don't think that's being harsh. 0-7 is not acceptable.
No, it's,
We got to leave it there, Rob.
we'll continue this right here.
Yeah.
Rob.
Yeah, continue to off air while you call your white fiance Katie. All right. But anyway, I mean, the issue of the so-called black male as a leader, like I stated, it has been demonized. But that's due to a lack of culture. That's also due to a lack of restraint. The so-called black man, oftentimes, he wants to have a so-called family, a so-called wife so bad that he gives away all of his rights. Right? He gives away his role. And when the woman sees that you give away your role, she's going to take all the power that you give away. And then when she gets bored or things blow up in her face, she's going to look back at you and say, well, how come you didn't do your job as a man? All right? Yeah. The so-called black man does not make a line in the sand and say, this is what I'm going to tolerate and this is what I'm not going to tolerate. He just forgoes all that and gives away all of his rights and privileges and then tries to wonder why nobody regards him. You can't do that. Anyway, peace.